Hi, could everyone be seated? Thank you so much. It is my honor and privilege to introduce the moderator for today's panel. Trevor Opp serves as Vice President of Product Management for Comcast Northeast Division. With more than 20 years of marketing, sales, and product management experience, Trevor has a rich background in managing the go-to market strategy for new products and services. Trevor, thank you.
Thank you.
And it's hard to believe this guy's been around for 20 years. To me, it looks like it should be 3 years.
I started young. That's a story for a cocktail sometime. First of all, thanks for joining us, and thanks to the panel. We're going to keep this fairly light today. I want to start with a little audience participation. Just quick show of hands. Is this anyone's first NECTA? Nice. Nice. What do you think of Newport so far? Pretty cool. So how about 5 years or more? All right, that's pretty impressive. 10? How about 20? Wow. Me too, actually, yeah. How long has NECTA been around? Do you know? Anyone know? 30? Does anyone got 30 years? All right. Well, here's why I asked, which is, as we approached how to address the panel today, there are certain realities of the world we live in, and we live in a pretty crazy world, tremendous competitive pressures, and the reality is we can't go as deep on the strategy side of the conversation as we'd like to, just based on the practical reality of the competitive landscape. So what we did is we structured it to be very conversational. The hope is that we play off each other. By all means, we welcome crowd participation. We'll have some formal Q&A at the end, but I invite the panelists to challenge each other, disagree with each other. We'll jump around a little bit, but we're not going to go deep into strategy. Rather, my hope is that we just tee up a conversation and you get the benefit of seeing the thought process behind some of the smartest and best and brightest in the industry. So that's how we're going to approach it. So the flow will be, I'll do quick bios. I got a couple canned questions. We'll play off each other and do formal Q&A. We got to move pretty quickly because we only got about 50 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and dive in. I'm going to start, my bios are not in the order of seating, so I'm going to start with Doreen Studley. So Doreen joined the Cox senior management team in 1999. She's held a variety of marketing positions. Her current position is Vice President of Non-Customer Acquisition. She leads a national team responsible for all strategy and programs related to residential new customer growth, including point-of-sale retail marketing, Hispanic segment marketing, and Cox Home Life marketing. She came to Cox with more than 15 years of marketing and leadership experience in the telecommunications field. Prior to Cox, she was a senior executive with Verizon Bell Atlantic. She has an MBA from Suffolk and a BS in marketing from Northeastern. So thank you, Doreen. Next is Chap Hanley, experienced strategist and leader with over 30 years of experience in the industry, currently responsible for managing Atlantic broadband systems in Eastern Connecticut. Chap is focused on customer experience, developing operational excellence, and streamlining processes as drivers of revenue improvement. Prior to joining Atlantic Broadband, Chap was Vice President of Customer Services for On Process, and before that, Chap held a variety of leadership roles within Comcast. Chap has a BA from Hobart College, and I had to look this up, Chap, a Master of Arts in Liberal Studies.
Right.
From, I didn't know what MALS was, so I had to Google that this morning, from Dartmouth College. And if that wasn't enough, in a prior life, he was also a teacher, a history and political science teacher in high school and middle school. So thank you, Chap. Next is Tricia Babin, Senior Director of Marketing for Comcast Northeast Division. Tricia is a seasoned marketing leader with over 25 years of experience in the cable industry. She takes great joy in leading and working with her successful acquisition and early lifecycle team, who together are passionate about creating and evaluating end-to-end targeted marketing strategies. Tricia's led the introduction of several exciting product initiatives, including the recent launch of Xfinity Mobile. This provides her an opportunity for her to develop new strategies, create the conversation to capture consumer attention and motivate purchase through effectively aligning need and the Xfinity product set. And last but not least, Will Rosser. Will joined GSN in August of 2011 as VP of Distribution Marketing and is responsible for developing developing and leading affiliate marketing programs from concept to creation to execution and evaluation, as well as increasing distribution of the network, currently available in over more than 80 million households. Will is based out of Santa Monica, which means he traveled a long way to be here. Thank you, Will.
My pleasure.
And prior to GSN, he held a variety of roles at Dish Networks. Will has his MBA from the University of Denver. So my last statement before we dive in is that, as we all know, the difference between a good panel and a bad panel is the quality of the panelists, so no pressure, it's all on you. I have nothing to do with it. So let's start with a softball. And here's the setup for this question, which is we're all marketing executives in the telecommunications industry, but we're also consumers in the broader marketplace. So as a marketing executive, forget the telecommunications industry for 1 second, just the broader landscape. What's your favorite advertising campaign of the last years? And more importantly, why? And let's start with Will.
Great.
Got to get your money's worth. This is a long flight.
No pressure at all on this. So I was thinking about this, and I actually really like the Geico campaigns. And I like it for a variety of reasons. One, I think they are fundamentally selling a commodity. It's not all that dissimilar from us. You know, it's very hard to differentiate yourself in that industry. And I think they've done a tremendous job of building that brand and sustaining that brand. And they've been able to do it in a way that keeps that campaign fresh. With a couple of different styles of ad. So they have the gecko, which I think has been fairly effective. And the most recent ad, if you haven't seen it, stars Boys to Men. And any ad that stars Boys to Men is going to be a good ad. And maybe part of the reason I like it so much is that they sing flatulence beautifully. So it's funny, it sticks, and I think they do a great job of making themselves top of mind and in the consideration set.
Are you a Geico customer?
I am actually not a Geico customer.
There you go. So you like it, how questionably effective.
But when I shop, I think of them.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, when you think of auto insurance or whatever insurance you're thinking of, how many of you don't think of Geico?
Yeah.
So I do
think
think
they've done a good
that, I had the same lines of thought on Geico, so I'm sure, but I wouldn't buy Geico. But it's a clever campaign. I love the campaigns, but it doesn't force, it's a brand recognition campaign. So I can associate those campaigns and Hump Day and the Camel with Geico, but I wouldn't go buy Geico insurance.
Why?
Because I shop for insurance for price reasons, and I don't go to, and I have my insurance company that I'm very loyal to, which happens to be Amica, which is a Rhode Island company that I would never leave because I'm very loyal to Amica as my insurance company.
So same question to you then. What would be your favorite ad campaign and why?
So, two answers. Quickly, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? So Verizon, and again, it's a cell phone company that was talking about their network. And they were making fun of losing your cell phone coverage. And the reason I kind of listened to that campaign is because, has any of us ever called your cell phone company and asked for a credit when you lose your cell phone? But I engage with consumers all along when they lose their internet coverage for 5 minutes. And I get constant calls about the amount of money I owe them because they got disconnected. So I find it in their industry, they can get away with poor service and customers don't demand credit. So I like the commercial because it made me think about our industry. Secondly, I would say in the last 24 hours or last 48 hours, Amazon did a great job of marketing themselves. They basically created an event 24 or 48 hours ago that sold more than they did during Christmas. And somehow, somebody figured out on Amazon, how can we go out and reach this audience? And so they created a successful campaign because it drove, billions of dollars to their bottom line. And I have no idea how they did it. I don't know how clever it was, but they created an event somehow.
So I'm going to stay in the same genre with the insurance, and I would say that Liberty Mutual has tried to differentiate themselves in a way that is both humorous but also very tangible to consumers with their, you get the impression that they're there for you, that yet they're doing it in a way that they're kind of dumping on their competitors without calling them out. Like, when's the last time your insurance company did that for you? So I like that one. I like it. But I also want to do a call out to my friends at Comcast. I have to tell you, the holiday commercial you guys did last year was so cool. And I'm not, I thought about this. We talked about it at Cox a lot. It was really cool. I thought it was relevant. It was touching. And especially because it was, I assume you had some success with that because it was connecting out to all the generations and showing why it was important to think about moving into new technology in the X1. I thought it was great. So
Tricia, you actually were intimately involved in that. So maybe for the benefit of those who don't know much about that campaign, could you quickly just tee it up?
Absolutely. So the quick upshot, and keep me honest on it, is it was a family traveling to the grandparents for the holiday season, and the grandkids are like, we don't want to go, grandparents don't have internet. Grandparents surprised them by having the internet ready for them, and everybody was happy. It was a joyous Christmas occasion, and it was very touching. Some tears kind of happened with that one, so yeah.
And X1 too, you did the voice remote.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a great demonstration of product, but
Yeah.
it was a real, it cut across all those things that Doreen mentioned.
Yeah. So how about the same question to you about your favorite ad campaign?
I love this question because I think everybody is a connoisseur of ads. When you think about even just the Super Bowl industry, $385 million spent this past year. That's as much money as was spent in all Super Bowls in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So advertising is a big deal. People are really plugged in. There's news segments around it. There's websites to critique them and lift them up. But one that comes to mind for me personally is the Coca-Cola Share Coke campaign. And it's got staying power. And the reason why I think that this one is so cool is Coke, such an iconic brand, powerhouse brand, has made a really bold and powerful move to omit any of their branding in place of names. And I don't know about anyone else in the room. Actually, show of hands. Anyone ever look for their name on a Coke can or bottle?
They don't have my name.
I can't find my name either. It's very frustrating. However, you can customize. So that's kind of a cool extension of what they can do is you can customize it for your name or what have you. But I seriously can't go into a store display with my 9-year-old son and look for like practically every family member's name, and I can still get away with him thinking that orange juice and seltzer is soda.
Yeah.
But I'm sure when he is sneaking around and having a soda, it's probably going to be a Coke, I would imagine. So that's why I really like it, and it's the personalization too. So that's really close to my heart, is personalizing and being really relevant to the consumer, and they've done a beautiful job in doing that.
I'll break the first rule of being a moderator, which is you're not supposed to participate in the conversation. But I got to share my favorite, which is the Domino's Pizza campaign. I don't know who's seen the Domino's Pizza campaign, but Domino's was all around speed and price and was not about quality. And they came out over the past few years and kind of owned their ugliness, and they were transparent and honest and sincere, and they basically showed you everything they did wrong and then committed to what they were going to fix. And I thought, while our industry is in a different place, I think it reinforces the huge focus we have on experience and service and how we're trying to transform the business. So that's mine. But
Hey, Trevor, I'm a big fan of Comcast ads too. And the reason is, as a small operator, I don't have the money you have to spend. But when you go against Frontier in Connecticut, I love your ads.
Yeah.
Because it helps to support the same message, and my customers are hearing it. So it helps to support, kind of a competitive, and I know you do a lot of competitive data research.
Yes. Well, you should buy Brian Fernie a beer later.
Okay.
I don't know if Brian's here, but next question. So we'll kind of get back into our industry for a second, and the context for this is pretty simple, but the world's changing fast, externally and internally. And in all your roles, you have access to tools and information, both on the front end of your planning and then on the back end of analysis. You have never had before capabilities. So I'm interested in just from how has technology changed how you approach your job in terms of how you go to market and how you approach kind of whatever your initiative of the day is, and then on the back end from an analysis standpoint. And then kind of the rub to this question is, how do you balance all that information and all that technology to the point where you're not creating so much complexity that it's counterproductive? And maybe start with you, Tricia.
Yeah, no, happy to. Yeah, so literally there are days I feel like a kid in a candy store with the amount of information that's available to us. You know, the thing that I've found that has evolved over time is not just the tools themselves, but the people, the skill sets. We need to have very smart people in place that can understand them and really maximize what you can get out of them. And it just doesn't start with a key member of the team. It's really the full facet of the team. It's everybody, because even the strategy folks who are planning the programs, they need to understand what the possibilities could be in terms of the targeting, but also on the back end, how we want that information to kind of parlay into something meaningful. Everyone end to end really needs to have a piece of that, known that. You know, one cautionary tale I would say, there's a lot of information, there's a lot of ways to get to microsegments. It could be maddening, and there's been times where we've gone down that path, and you really have to somewhat be a little bit disciplined in looking at what the golden nuggets really are at the end of the day, and that kind of takes some of that same more traditional marketing smarts of just understanding who the segments are, the profiles, doing your research, that kind of thing that just data that's out there is not going to give you, and then making those decisions based on where the gold can happen.
Yeah.
So,
Doreen, your role is not terribly dissimilar from Tricia's.
Right.
Anything to add? Or?
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I was thinking about this for the past few days, and you're right. The tools are like magical now. I mean, you can do things that you could never do before, but it takes a village. We have when I step back and I think about what it takes to get testing or a campaign into the market now, and where we start. And the process that we go through, it's amazing. I mean, within 90 days, we turn things around. And in the end, you really, if you're not really disciplined, you could end up with data that you don't really quite know what to do with. Mm-hmm. And that's why you have to stay always true to your goals. Like, what is the objective? What are you trying to either test and learn, or what are you trying to accomplish with this campaign? And then you have to measure up against that and understand, you know, what's the learning and the process, especially with the new digital tools. And you know, for non-customer acquisition, you know, for years we'd say, oh, you know, this is hard because it's easier when you're marketing to current customers because you know all about them. But really, you don't have that excuse anymore because there's, you know, resources. Many of our non-subs are also former customers. I mean, that's a fact. And you know, when we're trying to go back after them, we have some data and we have some understanding. And tools like, you know, Adobe Audience Manager and other things are really wonderful ways to try to segment and try to go after them. But on the back end, it's the most important piece because what are you looking at, and what did you learn from that campaign that you can then build on the next one? So
totally
you're right.
agree with that. Yeah.
Let me ask, you said 90 days from conception to execution. Do you feel that's even fast enough? Because it seems like, I mean, within 90 days, so much could change.
That's a good point. And so it depends on what kind of campaign we're doing. So that would be like for a drive campaign as opposed to a quick learning campaign that we would do. But you sound just like Mark Ratrax. That's funny you should say that. But in reality, you have to start planning that far in advance. When I say that, I mean, you have to start thinking about, all right, it's the second half of the year, and you know, we're sitting here in January. We know what has to be done. Let's put a straw man in place, and then you tweak it as you go along, but you can't change the fundamentals fast enough, I don't believe, to be able to, you know, you still have to have your core goals in mind when you're doing it. But no, you're right, and we have done things faster, but not on the large scale.
So Doreen, so you've been doing this for a while. Do you think it's harder these days or easier?
I think it's more interesting. I guess as long as you have the right people in place and the right agencies and the right partners, and that's why I said it takes a village. We have a lot of partners that work with us, and so I just think it's different. interesting and different. And as a as a person who's further along in my career, sometimes I sit there and thinking, oh my God, how can I don't know how I understand half this stuff. But then you have to step back, and you have to depend on your people and who you're hiring, and it's a constant learning process. And I realize too, when I'm there, that everyone's learning. It's not just me. That the things are evolving so quickly. And I know some people have to throw terminology and things like that, and then in the end you have to just understand like what are we using this tool for exactly? So and does it get us the goals and objectives, and does it deliver on what it is that we want? Because in the end, we're all here to manage our businesses and to drive objectives. So.
Absolutely. So Chap, the theme of NECTA this year is customer excellence. I read your bio. For those who don't know, I've known Chap for 20-something years, and Chap has got one of the most diverse resumes that I know. So you've seen it from the sales side, the operations side, customer-facing side. You left the cable side, worked on the support side, back now in a more of a general management role. So as you think about the evolution of managing the customer relationship, and what from your seat, what's the importance of the customer experience, and how is Atlantic Broadband managing the experience as part of the broader customer relationship?
So to be honest with you, I think it's not so much different than it was when I was a general manager at Continental Cablevision. So there's certain legs to the business. One is the customer, one is your employees, and one is your business and your profit and your efficiency. So those three legs of the stool have always been there. And the customer emphasis now, it's different because customers reach us in much different ways. So for instance, believe it or not, I'm still anti-social media, even though I have my own Facebook page because of my age, quite frankly. I have a Facebook page because of something personal to me. But I reached out to customers on this thing called Nextdoor, which is the way they talk to each other in my neighborhood. And they were bashing my organization in my neighborhood as we were launching a gig, and we were going through some technical issues as we launched new services. So I jumped on, I introduced myself, I said, I'm Chap Hanley, I'm the Vice President and General Manager of the thing that you're complaining about. Here's my cell phone number, here's my email address. And I started communicating to my neighbors. And I quieted down the storm, and people started emailing me or calling me with their individual service problems, and I addressed them one at a time and changed that train of email. Now I go on every once in a while because you have to keep up to it, and I answer all kinds of questions. I'm not afraid to go in, and talk. They're addressing tiling with Frontier was the last one that I got on and addressed. So I talked about tiling. I said tiling can be caused from a variety of reasons. It could be signal in your house, could be signal out on the poles. So I didn't bash Frontier. I just said, hey, as a general manager, I'm telling you, here's what the issue could be that you're experiencing. And all of a sudden you start to get people. I got another customer, sent me a note about an issue she was having in her house that I addressed personally. But then I also get people that address me personally that want to become our customers. So kind of one at a time, you're both retaining customers and you're talking to customers in a different way. But it's not that much different than when I was, a general manager. I hand out my business card every place I go, and I say to somebody, if you have a complaint, don't call the call center, call my cell phone, and I'll address your issue. Because I'm trying to divert the traffic from the normal, I called and I was on hold for 2 hours, which is kind of, unfortunately, the experience they might get at Atlantic Broadband. And I say, give me a call or email me personally and I'll resolve your issue. So it's just, I don't think it's that much different. It's just basic business practices.
So I'll open that up to the three of you. So, it's no surprise or no secret that the industry is kind of plagued with a legacy perception. Some of it's true and earned, some of it unfair. But as we try to grow our respective businesses, we've got to overcome those perceptions. And can you talk about how in your worlds, and Will, I'll tee you up. I don't know that this is as relevant, but it might be. But how do you deal with the customer experience side of this in terms of managing the relationships?
Well, fortunately, I only get a few phone calls from our viewers, which is nice. Listen, I maybe piggyback on what you were saying. I think part of the inherent problem is that this business is complicated, right? The way you get a television signal or a data signal into a house is not easy, and there are a lot of steps in between. And getting a video package to a customer is very complicated, and honestly, the customer doesn't care, and we can't explain that complexity. And I think, honestly, I think you guys have it the toughest, because if my signal looks bad on their television, I don't get blamed, and it's you. And there are a lot of pieces and parts between me and you and that television that could have gone wrong. So I honestly think the hardest part is how do we as an industry get to the consumer and explain to them in bite-size packets, this is basically how your cable service is delivered, this is basically how your programming packages are delivered, and this is why the world is happening the way it is, and get them to understand it. And if I figure that out, I will see you guys from my private jet as I fly off to Aruba.
Tricia, Doreen, anything you would add?
Yeah, from my perspective, I mean, early life is part of my team's aegis as well, and a lot of focus there around, informing customers. I mean, I think we do a good job on the upfront, explaining services, what to expect first bill, but it doesn't all resonate. That's a lot of information for a consumer to kind of take in at that point of sale. We need to get a little better about communicating some of this stuff earlier on, so we can give them the tools to be able to help themselves a little bit. Not to say that we want to cut out entirely when there's a dire need to call in and get some support, but sometimes it's easy fixes that you can just go online and figure that out. So I think just doing a better job will help there. And I'm part of one of these next door sites too, and and you have to get involved, and I think that's great, and it kills you to see it, but I think that the way that Chap's doing it, similar how I do it too, is like if you've got an issue, just reach out and I'll try to do my best to help you take care of it.
Yeah, and I would say that transparency and control is what the consumer's looking for, and it's a lot for us to do that, and we're trying to change our business. And I know, Comcast is, and Cox is, and I so Atlantic Broadband as well. We're trying to give them more control with their account management, and other companies have set the bar higher and higher, and maybe they're not as complex, but some of them, I mean, I'm just going to say it. Verizon Wireless, their account management online is pretty stellar, and it's a benchmark for a lot of us to try to hit that. We're getting better, but we can't. How can you get better fast enough? And social media, of course, is a double-edged sword. So, Nextdoor is we have, the PA people will come to us and have conversations about that, because they're also, they're trying to deal with that, and we have, different places where the competitors are very hot, and they're kind of fueling that fire. So you do have to step in and address it. I think it's the best, the best thing we can do is be transparent and try to address it. But we have a ways to go, because we have perception to overcome.
So, Trevor, I'm glad I'm not an engineer, because I do believe in the KISS principle, keep it simple.
Yeah.
And we operate an incredibly complex network, and it's more complex now than it's ever been, to deliver video, to deliver high-speed internet. But I'm constantly talking to consumers about our network, because I'm very proud of it. I have more fiber in the air than my competitor does. I deliver a gig in Connecticut to a residential home. I don't think any other broadband company does at this point. It's a complicated network, but you just have to simple it down, and I just explain to them, it's not perfect, but we're constantly looking at broadband capability and delivering more to you. And it doesn't happen easily. So there's breaking points in it. We're launching new software. Sometimes the software doesn't match the modem. So we do things in the middle of the night and the modem doesn't come back on. I got a lot of consumers that I'm talking to about unplug and plug your modem back in. I'm sorry, it didn't work. But the end result is I'm delivering you more bandwidth and speed because I'm doing this behind the scene work. So I'm constantly having that engaging conversation and trying to dumb it down as much as possible. So that, because basically I'm pretty dumb and that's the way I understand it.
You know, I'll sum up in my words what I heard you all say, which is there's an opportunity for education and transparency, but also, you know, it's the old adage of when you have an unhappy customer, if you get it right, you then have turned an unhappy customer into a pretty loyal customer. So Will, I'm going to pick on you for a minute. You are on the other side of the distribution business dynamic here. So you've got a unique challenge, which is, you know, in the world of content, there's probably more content available today than anywhere else in 8 million different platforms with multiple ways to monetize it. So we're not going to make this a question about anything overly confidential, but your challenge at the end of the day is to make sure you are supporting people like us, but also supporting people who want to consume content in 8 million other places. You know, how do you approach that? Because it's infinitely complicated.
So with all due respect, I love you like a brother from another mother, right?
This will
But
be good.
you are not my final client. Your customer is my final client. So, you know, the way we really think about this is what is ultimately best for that end viewer consumer. And I still believe, and I think we still believe, that is this current model. So, you know, 3 areas that we look at. In the world of the virtual MVPD, I think there's going to be a lot of shakeout in that. You see some growing pains already from, you know, Sony View, just this last week. When we look at those guys, we're really looking at it and saying, is what they're doing ultimately good for the consumer over the long term? Is it going to provide the consumer choice and high quality content in 5-10 years from now? And then, you know, can we come to an agreement that makes sense that we think ultimately preserves that? In the world of digital short form content, we've done it. GSN had our own digital studio. It was pretty successful. We drove a lot of people to watch some short form game shows that were created specifically for millennials. But the challenge of digital is we could never get enough volume that could actually turn it into a profit. And I think a lot of digital providers are facing that problem right now. So in lieu of that, we asked ourselves, how do we move them into a linear environment? And we couldn't figure out a way that made sense for that. So we've tabled it. And then the final, of course, is the SVOD world. And I'm a unique entity. My content has a very long life cycle. Once you know what happens to Walter White, and I won't spoil it for you, but once you know, it's hard to reuse that content and to monetize it again. My content, I can reuse and monetize, you know, a year after I first produced it. So when we look at those SVOD guys, you know, we're saying to ourselves, one, do I want to help somebody that I'm not convinced is actually supporting choice and quality for the consumer? Two, do I even make sense in that environment? And so we have really viewed those guys more as a marketing vessel for us so that our brand appears in an unusual place. And we're providing them content that we, you know, is near the end of its life cycle.
Yeah.
Is that long-winded
No, I
enough?
love, you know, I break it down to the simple, which is when you put the customer first and what they want,
Yeah.
even if you can't give them exactly what they want, if that's your kind of North Star, that's a pretty good place. That's the kind of the beginning of most strategies. So we got just over 10 minutes left, and I'm going to attempt to have a little fun with you guys. I'm not going to call out one of you. I'm going to ask for a brave soul, but I would love it if you'd all participate in this. And the question is, we always have the best intention as marketers, but we have, over our long careers, inevitably got something horribly wrong. So I would love to hear a story about a time when the best of intentions fell short. Tell us maybe a funny story. And then, more importantly, what did you learn from it, and how did you apply that to your planning going forward?
Wait, it's only one story? Because I prepared 100 slides for this.
Then you can go first.
All right, so listen, my one that still pains me today. We built a press release and thought we could turn it into a big marketing event in a bunch of cities around the U.S. We got the press. Not many customers showed up to actually take our product. And a few days later, it ended up on the competition's website saying they can't give it away. So, yeah, that's not one you like to face. It was pretty painful. But I think the lesson that I really took away from it is we got trapped in an echo chamber. You know, we were sitting there saying, God, this idea is great. This is brilliant. And we didn't really shop it with Joe Consumer and really try to think about the end consumer. And so, you know, now, anytime I think I have a brilliant idea, I like to do hallway conversations to see if anyone else agrees with me. And generally, they don't. So.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I actually have one. It's not recent years, but it's one that, for me too, it was very painful because I think it was more of the labor that went into the preparation, the planning, the involvement of other people, and it was promotional roll-off. So got customers come on with great promotions, wanted to get ahead of that, get out there, you know, 3 months before, 2 months before, at the point of roll, to say, hey, we've got the next best offer, and you're going to love it because it's going to extend your time with us. And, you know, despite all that good intention, all that good preparation of impeccably timed communications and precision around the targeting and the offer, our good intention really didn't map to implicit consumer behavior. It actually inspired them to want to shop, and it wasn't with us. It was with the competition. And so that was a really tough learning because it wasn't even tested. We just kind of rolled right into it. And I think there's some folks here that were integral to helping me with that. Sorry. But yeah, I would say that that's one that pains me the most because it just had a big impact.
So what did you do? What do you do differently now because of that?
Yeah, so now don't remind them that the promotions are on it, but it's more about steeping the value proposition in, so reminding them about the products and services. And going back to the other conversation, we may have an opportunity to, based on data, to be able to better map to what that value proposition really is to that consumer. So I'm excited about seeing how those kinds of things unfold as more data becomes available and we're ready to kind of seize it and deploy it.
So basically living in a constant test and learn.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Chap, I know you've made
So,
millions of mistakes.
I make mistakes every single day. My wife reminds me of those mistakes that I make, and so does my daughter-in-law as they try to make me into a better person. But I can tell you that I take every single customer complaint and try to understand how we can do things better. So I kind of listen to customers, or I listen to employees and kind of think, okay, what did we do wrong that led to this event? And so I took one recently. It was a neighboring business of mine right down the street, the Black Point Market, which is kind of where we go to hang out and have coffee, and it's around the beachfront area. They were put on a sleeper account over, because they were a seasonal business, and we mistakenly gave their phone number away to a new place called the Black Market Pizza. So all of a sudden, they started getting calls, and when they came back to seasonally open up, it was a big issue. So I had to get involved and go to both places and basically credit them as much money as they wanted to satisfy them, including buying the pizza boxes back from the guy that had already printed on them the new phone number that I had to buy back from him to give back to the market.
What did you do with the boxes?
Yeah.
Kathy Diaz, I thought we really should have taken one of our Atlantic Broadband stickers and put it on there, but we are engaging in a conversation with him about advertising with him. I made 2 friends out of 2 enemies, is really what I did. And so now I have 2 loyal customers because of a mistake that we made. So it's kind of the fight you fight every single day on the operational front.
So I thought about this. I did. Obviously, I've made mistakes over the years, and I thought about ones that may be more humorous, and this is not recent. In the old marketing world, you were very dependent on 800 numbers to make sure that you were getting, your advertising out and your calls, and you could track them. And I can remember, and it was probably very early in my career at this company, because Verizon was a little different how they handled that. We ended up, I really don't even know how this happens, but we ended up, of course, with a 800 number that was going to some sex shop somewhere, and we couldn't pull it back fast enough, and we had to negotiate. It was so embarrassing. I can remember I was just horrified. So that was bad. And then other times, I remember another time we had a new product launch, and we underestimated the demand. So unfortunately, we had to backpedal and we had to schedule things out. It was tough, but those are the ones that come top of mind to me.
So I'll share a funny one that you just made me think about. And this person will remain nameless. They're definitely not here, but this was not my project, just for the record. But this was several years back. We did a campaign to target Chinese American community, and obviously no one in our office is fluent in Chinese, so we had to outsource the work to a vendor who would translate. And we put this campaign into market, and I was involved only as I was the product guy at the time. And we got a call from a very nice bilingual customer who said, "I just want you to know that you sent out a bunch of mail pieces that are symbols and they don't actually say a single word on them." So we're like, well, all right then. But that teaches you the importance of quality control. So, all right. So, why don't we open it up for some questions? And we've got such a talented panel up here. We will give you the wide side of the field. Anything's in play. I would love to have someone just throw something out there, and if someone doesn't, I will start calling on people. So, I can see someone in the back. Deb. Yeah, I'll repeat the question just in case anyone couldn't hear it. And I'll actually build off it because I almost used a very similar question. And the question was the needs of the marketplace, how prospective consumers want to engage with us is very different than it used to be. And we've relied heavily on things like direct mail. We've got certain segments today that is questionably relevant with how are the marketing strategies and planning evolving. I'll also add in a wrinkle to the question, Deb, which I thought was a great question, which is, we intentionally chose a fairly diverse panel. We've got the content side, we've got the cable side, we've got West Coast, we've got East Coast, we've got male, we've got female, we've got small operators, we've got big operators, we've got sales, operations, marketing, all sorts of different. But what we all are is pretty tenured in our role. So when you think about things like, Doreen, you're targeting Hispanics, everyone's targeting the millennial category. That's not who we are. So how do we approach it? And then how do we as individuals get our head around those segments, understanding that we are not the segment themselves?
Yeah, and I'll actually go first because I would actually, not that I'll disrespectfully a little disagree with the statement, just a little bit. Only because in my findings, because there's a whole controversy. Should we be spending money to millennials? And by and large, when you get the right offer, the right message, to them, they're going to respond. And maybe it's a novelty. Maybe no one else is marketing to them, and it's, white side of the field for us to be able to go out and get them. That said, I do think that the paradigm will be shifting, and I think that there's got to be more focus looking at digital. I think that there's going to be a really great session coming up right after this one that will dig into millennials and
Shameless plug for
yes,
the
shameless plug for the next one. And I think that that's something that we absolutely have to keep our eye on. There has to be persistence in that space, but I don't think DM is dead for millennials, not yet. But I just think it's about being smart and talking to them, thinking about where they are in their life stage. We actually have a full-out MDU or apartment building communications, but it's thinking about the products and services based on their lifestyle that is going to appeal to them and the things that they're doing to use with their services. So I think you just need to be smart, and it can't be cookie cutter. It can't be just general market communications to these guys. It's got to be different.
Because we lump them as one group, and they're very different than that. And what's funny, Deb is right. I think today, CTAM is having a call, like a marketing call, and they're going to talk about direct marketing to the millennial group, which is really funny because I see it in my own home. They love getting mail. Of course, they shouldn't be in my home. That's the first thing. But they love getting like mail. It's the most bizarre thing. Now, whether or not they respond to that is questionable because I don't know that they can afford it. But it is true. We're learning a lot about them, and they're definitely not one. There's not one size that fits all. So it's a lot of learning because they're going to be obviously the future of what the company's going to be doing. So it's very important.
Will Chap, anything you would want to add?
I just happen to be a member of what's called the Young Professional Organization, which is a big chamber organization. So I am the father that goes and hangs out with the kids, and when they start drinking, I leave around 9 o'clock to go to bed. But I engage with them, right? So I kind of listen to them, and I talk to them about how do you make buying decisions, or I'll talk to high school kids about how they make buying decisions, and for the most part, they use their devices. They make buying decisions off of Facebook, off of an interactive device on their phone. That's where they get their, and when you talk to them about, well, how should I sell something, they go on and say to me, do this, do this, do this. There's no direct mail involved in it. It's consumer interaction that they're dealing with. So I think we need to kind of listen to that audience and kind of learn from their buying habits and just engage with them like you do any other audience.
I mean, I don't have a lot of first-person experience because I'm not marketing direct to the consumer, but maybe to defend my position that I like Geico's ad campaign, it seems to me from the outside looking in that brand is going to be very, very important. And having a brand that that millennials are going to want to engage in. I think there's a lot that shows that they want to engage with a brand that they feel like is doing something good for their community and doing something good for the world. So I think that the more you can have a brand message out there that puts you in the consideration set, which is getting even tougher and tougher, I think that's where we're going to have to go.
Perfect.
And we're obviously marketing the internet to them. We are marketing broadband connections to them because that's what they want. Yeah. I don't talk about video at all. I talk about you need me to be connected to the world. And they do need us. So that's the way I think about marketing to them.
So I think we might have time for one last question, and then we'll call it a wrap. Anyone? Sandy Parks, of course. Thank you, Sandy.
Don't have to project my voice as much as I was expecting to. So, when you were talking about customer experience, a lot of you were, speaking about the personal contacts. But it seems like as an industry now, we're encouraging people, not to have so many personal contacts, but to do digital first contacts to see when your outage is going to end, to reset your boxes or your modems, or to see when your text is showing up. So I'm curious, just because when you guys all spoke about what you're doing to improve customer service, it seemed more like personal contacts, but as an industry, we seem to be moving more towards digital. So is that the right decision?
No, I'll go ahead first. No, I don't think it's the right decision, but I think that when you're in the moment, in your own little microcosm of the world, it's just simply the right thing to do, really, at the end of the day. And if you can make a little bit of a mark one at a time, that's a good thing. As far as the need to get consumers to engage more and be more comfortable with the tools and ability to kind of self-diagnose issues online, we've got to get there. I mean, just the economics is there. We've got to be there. I think it's just a paradigm shift to the point that Doreen made earlier. Verizon's doing an excellent job. They're able to deliver a lot of that traffic there. I just think that we've been a type of business where we have encouraged calls. Hey, if you've got a problem, call us, let us know. Everything has an 800 number on it. So I think it's just a matter of kind of digging out from that mindset from consumers and setting them on the path. But I think it's going to be really important to be thinking about what the message is to drive them to it. It can't be everything to everybody. It's got to be somewhat thoughtful. We've got to be thinking about what they're thinking in that moment that would drive that. It's like when you're looking for a car and then all of a sudden you see the car everywhere. We've got to be kind of looking at what's happening and when's the best time to be able to time those kinds of messages to them.
I do think self-help tools, first of all, they're going to create more efficiencies for us, so there's less overhead involved in self-help tools, and that's what the consumer wants. I mean, my son taught me to throw away all the manuals in the house. Why? Because you go out and talk to YouTube and you can fix anything in your house. Mm-hmm. That's the generation that they don't want to call anybody to fix their modem or to look at the health of their modem. So all we got to do is give them the tools that already exist. It's out there. I mean, I can look at modems. I can look at every consumer's modem down to the health of the modem. All I got to do is say to a customer, hey, here you go, take a look at it. You can tell if your modem's green, yellow, red, and if it's red, you can do X, Y, and Z. Or you might have to call us because we might have to get into your house to fix a problem that we need to fix. But the tools are out there, and I think we need to provide those consumers with those tools. And I know you guys are kind of leading the way, and we'll follow that way as a smaller operator. But you need to deliver to the consumers what they want. That doesn't mean that the senior citizen out there is going to use your self-help tools. They're not. They're still going to call you. They're going to call you because they like you. They're going to call you because they want to talk to the rep that they talked to last month about the bill they got, and they're going to say to have the same conversation they had month over month because that's what they like to do, seniors, and that's okay. So you have to have different ways to communicate to your market audience.
So with that, we're at time. I want to once again thank the panel. They put a lot of time and energy into this, traveling from all sorts of places, and if we could give them a round of applause. And then thank you all for coming, and hope you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you very much.